Hello, everyone. Hi.
Hello.
We thought we'd do this Nexus a little bit differently. We asked you to please take a couple of minutes to reflect on this question. What is now possible that was not possible before in relation to the work environment when you work? And it would be fantastic if you could add your thoughts into the chat box.
That's a great first one. Very strategic. I love it. Very good. The world is becoming flat for talent, Anthony. I think that's what you are saying. Yeah.
Bringing us closer. That's nice. Yeah. Taking your kids to school or to the bus.
Yeah, and Christiane said, walk when it is best to do. I like that, when and where it is best to do, much more intentional, not just autopilot. You go to the office at a specific time, but you can decide both on the location and the time.
And the more blending of work and life activities, hopefully, if you're good at setting boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Connect with everyone across the globe anytime. Hi, Kat, by the way. Oh, it's lovely to see you. It's lovely to see some old friends.
Yeah, and I think what Kat is saying here is more ability to do asynchronous work as well using collaboration platform.
More time, less travel. Previously, remote teams now have more of a level playing field. Yeah, that's true. Meetings in random places like your car are possible now. That's true. Hopefully more measuring results, not optics in the office.
And the level playing field, I'm not sure the first time of the person who wrote that starts with an N. I like that. And the question will be, how do we handle that when it's not a level playing field anymore? So right now, most people are remote. Before, most people were face-to-face. When we start meshing that and having a distributed workforce either in or out at the same time, it will be again not level playing field anymore, which is a challenge for leaders.
Did you have a question, Danny?
Just breaking up, I think. I am spending quite a bit of time thinking about there are still areas where Caroline needs.
Maybe some technical things, Sabine. I like Catherine's comment as well. I think it goes toward empathy, compassion, mental health, understanding of engagement. That's a really good point.
Yeah, and Kat, exercise or get comfortable with using other sense.
I'm curious to know which senses Kat is referring to. Make me curious here. I was reading, Sabine, an article around that was saying the most underused technology of 2021 was the telephone. I'm thinking about that when Kat speaks about senses, because the video, as much as it brings an additional way of connecting, it can be very exhausting. And when you hear the voice in it only, and I heard that specifically in terms of coaching, you can connect at a much deeper level, interestingly enough. So the sense point is very interesting. And now we see everybody.
So it's lovely to have you, everyone. We're going to hand it briefly over to Joe just to say some introductory words. And I think you're all going to be up for some immersive and exchange-based 50 minutes. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Sabine. Thank you. Hello, everybody. If this is your first time joining a FRED leadership event, we want to extend particularly a very warm welcome to all of you. And welcome back to a lot of familiar faces and names that I can see here today. And I just want to say a little bit about FRED leadership. FRED really is an organization. It's a community. And we bring together people who are really passionate about ethical and inclusive leadership and that understand the transformational power of treating others with these principles, which leads to dignity and respect for everybody. And leadership practice is, by that very definition, the word practice, it's an ongoing, lifelong learning commitment. Yeah. And that's something that everybody in FRED feels very strongly about. So it's great to see all of you here today. And if you are new to FRED, please consider joining our wonderful community of thought leaders. And so thank you so much. I'm looking forward to a really fascinating and very timely session with Sabine and Sylvain. So I'm going to hand it back now to Sabine. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jo, and thank you everyone for joining. We still have new joiners, but they will easily slot in, so it's not a problem. Sylvain and I will spend about 20 minutes actually answering the questions from our perspective. You might find, I don't know, Sylvain, but my anticipation is at least that we might not agree on every point. So we might not necessarily be aligned, which I think makes this event quite unusual, because you will get different perspectives and you can see where you sit. And then we're planning to actually send you into breakout groups to discuss some of those questions among yourselves. We will keep it short and crisp. You will see that. We bring you back. There will be an opportunity to harvest as a group, and then to really close out with some tangible actions that you can take away. So that's just a rough setup. And with that, Sylvain, maybe I just start by asking you the first question we crafted, which is about the performance cliff, right? What forces provide a performance cliff, or do they even provide a performance cliff in your view, in this new way of working when you set up?
Thank you, Sabine. And I like if we are going to disagree, because for you as participant, there is nothing more boring than a panel where everybody smiles and say, yes, agree with you and you are right. And sometimes out of those disagreements, we get new ideas, we get a little bit of creativity, we get different viewpoints. So I like when you said that, Sabine. Yes, so the performance cliff. First, I think it's a very provocative title, and that's the first one I'm going to disagree with, if I might, Sabine. Yeah. So first, the article I found super interesting. If you read it in detail, it doesn't really say that performance went down as such in terms of output. And there was this survey looking at people in the IT function and how much they delivered versus the numbers of hours they put in. The total outcome or output, if you want, remained identical when they were working in a distributed way. What's changed was the additional hours they had to input versus working face-to-face. Okay, so it doesn't mean they're delivering less, it means they need more time to do it. So the ratio of performance from that perspective could go down. I'm not always sure that it's perceived by the organization, because often the employee will take over the additional hours. And you might be doing that by working later, having more intense day, working on the weekend. So maybe for the employer, it's not something they can see. The reality is that when we were sent in lockdown and had to work remotely, we had to put more hours to manage the complexity of the remoteness setup of work. Which for me doesn't mean, by the way, that the future of work means less productivity. And why is that so? Because one, I think we were sent in lockdown with all our face-to-face practices. So the way we used to work was face-to-face. It was set up that way. The tools, the practice, the skills, the mindset, the habits, everything was face-to-face. And here we were sent virtually, and we were using exactly the same process, habits, mindset, skills, a few more new technology, but not so dramatically different. And I think over time, what will happen, Sabine, is one, we will not be only remote, we will have a nice balance of hybrid work, which is not something we've experienced so far. I think we had a little bit of a glimpse of it, and now the next wave is coming. So again, we are all back home, if you want. So we haven't really experienced the hybrid work. We've experienced face-to-face, all remote, and I think the nice blended, we haven't done it at scale yet, and we are going to learn to do it. And I think it's super important for teams now to come together and to discuss what they need to keep and what they need to change in terms of technology, process, habit, skills, in order to be effective in this new setup. I don't think anybody has got the answer. I don't think anybody on the phone has. We are all trying to find out the answer. And it's by piloting and trying new practices and reviewing them that over time we will become more literate at navigating that hybrid setup.
And I think this is exactly the starting point where we probably have the biggest disagreement. So the study Sylvain was referring to is a study from the University of Chicago, which was released about 7 months ago. And what they did is they looked at, like Sylvain said, 10,000 actually IT-related staff. So people who are already digital natives of sorts or by design. And they found that actually those people had to put in 30% more time. And because of that, you know, they were 20% less effective. I think my big concern and my big worry is that leaders completely underestimate the impact of this push towards a digital environment, because they spend, in my experience, and for those of you who don't know me, I actually work exclusively with leaders of strategy. So I'm advising usually C-suite executives, and I see that they don't think beyond the horizon. They spend a lot of time thinking about how to track employee times. In fact, some banks have started with a sign-in method. So they go into the 50s and 60s where you have to clock in and clock out when you log on. They spend a lot of time talking about equipment. So what kind of chairs, what kind of screens should they provide? But they don't really spend time thinking about innovation, collaboration, and culture. And the numbers that we get, I just wanted to share some statistics with you that I came across just this week that really blew my mind. And everything we're going to talk to, by the way, there will be a handout. We will send it to all of you and we will make it available on LinkedIn. Microsoft has actually released numbers on the use of their technology, particularly email and Teams. So I just give you some stats. The average meeting time on Teams has increased by 10 minutes. So it's now not 35, but 45 minutes. We're sending 45% more chats per week and 42% more chats per person after working hours. People generally respond to a chat message within 5 minutes or less. That's 50% of people. Just think about that. 50% of people respond to a Teams chat within 5 minutes or less. We have sent 40.6 billion more emails in just 1 month than the year before. 66% of people increase 66% increase in the number of people working on documents, and 62% more calls or meetings that are unscheduled or ad hoc. And I think that those numbers actually draw a very striking picture. We haven't, as you said, Sylvain, we haven't learned how to cope with this new environment. We're not setting healthy rules for ourselves. There are economic benefits for companies that they honed in very quickly by saving office space. Allianz, I think you know the numbers better, but I think Allianz announced that they will cut 50% of office space worldwide. Google is reducing by 1/3. So immediately cash flows are seeing an improvement, but we shift the emotional load and actually also the financial burden of keeping a workplace to many office workers, because they now have to use 10 square meters in their apartment or in their house for workspace without being remunerated. So I'm actually, as you can hear, I'm quite critical about the current setup, which leads us to leaders in this setup and what we think they need to be mindful of, or what we see as conversations and key topics, Sylvain. And of course, feel free to respond to anything I said as well.
I love what you say, Sabine, and I think that's super important. In essence, you are saying, look, in the lockdown we've experienced, it has been very intense for people. It has been, the day have been more packed. Nobody has been prepared for it. We had to deal with all the complexity of the remoteness that we were not prepared for. It happened within 48 hours. Can you imagine a company a few years ago that would have said, now we send everybody home within 48 hours? You would have been fired as the project manager. You would have needed a 2 years change project and involving people and preparing everything. It happened in 48 hours. So totally, I think it's very exhausting. And I would say, if we look at Microsoft statistic, who is surprised that we use more technology, because we spend the day in front of technology. So I'm not sure the fact we are more in front of technology should be surprising to anybody. What I'm trying to say is what we are experiencing here is not the future of work. It's an emergency lockdown. And if we use that time to reflect on what we learn and shape something later that will use both the face-to-face and the hybrid in a meaningful way, hopefully we will make it a much better experience than what we're experiencing right now.
Yeah. And I think this is where you and I are aligned. We feel that this topic needs attention. It gets a lot of attention, but you know, thinking about it from a different angle, thinking about collaboration, co-creation, idea generating. We can see that innovation rates have gone down. Like you said, we're not using the telephone anymore. People sometimes, it's easier to disconnect through technology. So you chat rather than you have the standing meetings. Kat and I rolled out huddles and lean management tools. And I think those tools are very helpful if teams stick to it. But we see quite a bit of regression on those topics. And I think that is the challenge. How do we connect with that? And in your experience, Sylvain, have you seen any answers from leaders that you think are particularly interesting around culture and strategy and climate and how they want to set it up?
It's a great question. And I'm looking at the chat as well, just to highlight a few comments which are interesting. So like Kat is saying, impact on well-being, totally. I mean, the World Health Organization has indicated that stress will be the #1 cause of death in the world by 2030, the #1, above all kind of disease you might be aware of, and that's very scary. The other one is you look at the rate of burnout, depression, isolation, is incredibly increasing. Again, it's due to many things, obviously, but it's really, really concerning. And then I see keep mentioning you run program at 3 a.m. totally. And so that's the challenge of flexibility. The border, Sabine, you mentioned earlier. How do I put a limit? Great, I have all the flexibility in the world. Oh my God, I have all the flexibility in the world. It goes in both directions. And so back to your question, and that's a bit what Jane is saying. What is the leadership approach? What is the culture we have to try to manage that in a healthy way? I would say a few things on what. So culture, strategy, climate. #1 is, I think company needs to choose a hybrid working strategy that fits with their business strategy. So not just do it because everybody's doing it. That's the big risk. And you know the hype. Everybody goes agile. Everybody has got some fancy candy bar in the workplace. Everybody is dressing down now. So what fits with your culture, your strategy, what makes sense for you? The culture really depends where you stand. Are you a startup? I am working with some startup that say I really want people face to face because we are shaping the culture. We don't know each other. We are working a lot in sprint, in agile. We feel it's better face to face right now. While others are pushing the whole system completely remote right now, and some other are somewhere in the middle. So you see all kind of choices being made by company. I think they have to make the choice that fit with their strategy, but fits as well with what their employee and what their candidate want. And where I am concerned is when they don't listen to what their employee want, and they are not aware what their candidate wants, because the candidate will now have a choice. The candidate will be able to say, I go to that company as well because of the way of working. And so if you want to attract some highly sought after talent, you have to keep that in consideration. Yeah, so that's all I would bring together. Maybe the last thing I would say is I think there is a huge skills and mindset shift that need to happen. And I think company needs to help employee and leader to operate in that new setting. You can't just hope that it will happen, because toxic behavior face-to-face will continue to be toxic in a remote environment. It's like a teacher. If you're not a good teacher face-to-face, you won't be a good teacher online. If you're not empathic face-to-face, it's even harder to be empathic through the screen now. What we call digital empathy is a skill that leader will need to develop. And so, yes, we definitely need to help them. We didn't have time to do the change program when we went remote. Now we have to think through the change program to help them.
And actually building on that, I think this is very true. This digital empathy, and I love that. I think you and I almost have the identical quote, because I also always said, average leaders in a remote setting or in a hybrid setting become bad leaders, right? And bad leaders stay bad leaders. But actually, we have to teach some new skills and transfer some new skills, but also really think about some other items that actually really impact the future of our ability to evolve as an organization and as a system. And I just would like to share one brief slide with you. And by the way, all the statistics, I will copy them in the chat, and you will actually also get the handout later on. But I think for me, really, it's focusing on culture, collaboration, and connection. So how do we actually stay connected as an organization, as a system? How do we maintain our identity, our climate, what it tastes like, what it feels like to work in this company? How do we transport that in a way? How do we keep collaborating? Because what we see is, we see that in a way people work off task lists, but we see a lot less innovation and creativity, which just arises by talking to one another in an unstructured way. And then, of course, the impacts on culture and strategy. If I truly want to do a culture shift, how do I do that if it's blended? What I would like to share with you is actually an idea that I got today at a talk. I attended the Forbes Women in Leadership Business Summit. And the keynote was given by Nora Kirdenbaum. She is the CEO of Vitra. Those of you who don't know Vitra, Vitra is the license holder for Eames design and other design furniture and appliances in Europe. So they're quite well known. They're luxury brand companies, family owned. And what she told us, I thought was fantastic. She said, we're shifting from an office setup or office campus setup to a club. So we create a club experience for people, like you're a member of a club. And so there are community spaces in the club where you just hang out and you feel comfortable and you really enjoy being there. And that is great. And we set it up beautifully. And then we have places where you can adjust the space for individual needs, maybe people working on a project together or having a meeting or having a lecture. And that is very individualistic and can really be altered. So it's very flexible space. And then we have what they call private space. And private space is either private offices or the equivalent is you work from home. And she said, when you are in a private space, you're not disrupted. No one is interrupting you. This is really focus time. And they divided their employees in a group, which I thought was really fascinating how they did it. They said they have workplace residents. Those are people in production, so they cannot do their job from home. They have to be 100% there. Then they have workplace enthusiasts. Those are people who maybe work a day a week from home, but otherwise come to the office and are really glad that they're in the office. Then they have workplace citizens. They are 50% at home and 50% in the office. And then they have nomad workers who can truly work from everywhere. That is 100% of typically working from home. The reason why they did that is they said, if we have too much of a mix, if people don't choose one or the other, it's very difficult for us to manage culture and set up in a good and structured way. It confuses everybody in the team. So it's better to know, what are you, which category do you belong to, and then how can we collaborate together? And I thought that was a beautiful idea, especially the club idea.
That's a great idea, Sabine. And many organizations have been working on creating personas to help guide the discussion around the type of worker you want to become. Typically, it's based on 2 dimensions. What do you want? What do you need in the phase of life you are in? And what does your job allow you to do? And it enables you to create those personas. And I like the way it's worded, Sabine. That was a great example. The other thing I think it enables you to do as a company is, as well, if you think on the HR side, is to start aligning your HR benefits around those personas. Because often companies have invested lots in creating, like you said, club, a great space, headquarters where people come, but you have a lot of costs around that. You might have benefit for the gym, you might have kindergarten where the employee bring their kids, you might have a canteen, you will have different things. Well, do I still need to pay that if you show up only once a week or once a month in the office? And in exchange, if I work always remotely, can I get some voucher or some delivery of food or whatever that help me still remain healthy and when I can't access the canteen? So I think there will be an evolution of the way we are going to look at benefits as well along those personas.
Yeah, and becoming more flexible, right? Do we have some simple ideas or effective elements, some suggestions of what people could do, and especially leaders could do?
Yeah, there are lots of things happening right now, Sabine, which I think is great. The first one I would say is talk with your employees. Sounds very obvious, but I see many companies designing model based on their own belief, their own experience, based on somebody in the C-suite that wanted to see their PA, and that PA was working remotely that day and they hated it, and they say everybody has to be back in the office. So very subjective point of view. So I think talking with employees, finding out what candidate wants is very important. I would say number two, creating a space for teams to have dialogue. I think the team needs to discuss what do they need. I don't think company will have one model. They will have multiple models. I mean, that was true in the past. Your sales team often was already the nomad team you mentioned. And some people already had physical role. They had to be in the office. Some already were working remote. So you will have different model. The question is, what does the team need? And building on your persona example, I think it's super important that employees do not start cutting a deal just with their manager. So imagine you're my manager, Sabine, and I say, you know what, Friday, Wednesday, I would love to be home. And you say, yes, Sylvain, that's fine. And then somebody else has other day, and then it's a mess. So I think it's good to have team defining model that fits for their need, where employee can find their own model within it. And I think that's important. Those dialogue needs to happen. And then the third thing I would add is, I mentioned before, is the need to have skills development program. How do you engage people remotely for the leader? How do you show empathy remotely? And then for the employee, how do you remain visible if you work remotely? How do you make sure that you update your manager recently? I mean, you have to change your working practice if you want to be effective. Otherwise, you are just going to add more work and be burnout at some point. So skills development is super important.
I agree with everything you just said. I would complement it just with maybe two additional interesting insights or studies that I think have to be thought of or have to be recognized. There is a big disconnect between how leaders feel about the current setup, this new way of working, new work, and the employees. McKinsey did a study, and they found that 61% of leaders say that they are thriving right now. Oftentimes because they see their family a lot more than they used to and so on. That's actually 23 percentage points higher than staff members. So there is a true experience cliff, whether I'm a leader or whether I'm a colleague in the system. And I think this is probably where we need to start. We need to raise more awareness why all of these things you just mentioned are so important. And the slide we prepared that I'm going to share actually covers just everything we just said. So you're going to get it as a handout. There is just a couple of pointers or thoughts that we have already mentioned, like exhibit digital empathy, schedule daily check-ins, talk more, establish rules, ensure that there are boundaries and stick with them, and breaks, manage expectations, remove obstacles, items like that. It's fantastic to see how you engage in the chat. I think between us, Sylvain and I said, we know that there is so much experience in the room. And we would
Sabine, before we go there, may I just add one thing? I think it's, sorry, I have a passion for that. And I love the point you made about the discrepancy between manager and employee. Just a quick additional thought for the breakout discussion. I think there is a big discrepancy between employee as well. Take between male and female. The female specifically found themselves picking up much more household work, or taking care of children, or caretakers simply of parents, elderly, and they are the ones that are really suffering now much more than men. Now, I'm very generic in my statement. I am a father myself, and I hope I'm not in that category, but I'm just putting numbers out there. And then you have as well the divide, and I saw some study from the US between women of color as well that are even more suffering. So there is a lot of fascinating diversity study. And as much as hybrid work is an opportunity for diversity, it's a big risk at the same time. And that's something we need to think about.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that is very, very true. Okay, so if you like, we would like to invite you to go into breakout rooms. We will put you probably into 3 breakout rooms, I think. Sam is going to manage that for us. Each breakout room will actually discuss one of those questions we try to answer from our perspective. And it would be great if after the 10 minutes you have together, you actually come back with, we said we want to hear what's new, what's tangible, what's meaningful from your discussion. So each breakout room will have an opportunity to report back, but just for very few minutes, so 2 or 3 minutes. But we hope that you really enjoy talking to one another and building on those points we have already discussed and shared. So Sam, are we ready to put people in breakout rooms? It looks like we're good to go. So you will get the questions in the name of your breakout room. We will also put it again in the chat. Sam, can we give the breakout rooms 1 question each?
Yep, that's fine. I broadcasted them, so everyone should have seen them.
Yeah.
I love starting with the chat because it enables people to put their thoughts out there and to check in from the start.
Yeah, I like that too. Also because people are coming in because they're intrigued by the topic and they've got things they want to say. And so I thought that was really great.
No
Thank you.
problem.
I'm gonna keep listening. It's so beautiful. Thank you so much for doing it. It's a beautiful, it's a beautiful way of raise collective awareness. Yes, I'm enjoying it.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Yeah.
Thanks for the feedback. I'm really enjoying this, but I already enjoyed our conversation, Sylvain, because I think it's great, right? To have different perspectives as well, and to see where we are aligned, because the essence is the same, I think. Yeah.
What I think is so fascinating is this seems to be working for people who are leaders, but not necessarily the people who work for them. And I mean, I think that was my big takeaway. That's my headline right now is, oh yeah, this makes being a leader, we get to see our families more and we get to juggle a bit more. Maybe we can sit out in the garden and have a cup of coffee while we're, listening in on a call or something. But for, regular employees, it's super stressful because you're missing all those nuances. Like I'm thinking about how when I would go into an office and I would walk into my boss's office and ask her a question or talk to her, and I could just tell immediately by her facial expression whether what I was saying was going to work or not, or whether she wanted to talk about that right now, whether I had hit a hot button or something. And you just don't have any of that, body language, all that kind of, and the whole thing about, we used to talk about weather, like an organization I worked in, our leader, we would send messages to each other and say, you'd say, there's a storm brewing, or weather's looking a little cloudy, and this was all before like phones, and we would know immediately whether this was a good day to like broach a new like idea or topic with the boss, just based on how she walked in to the building in the morning. Like everything about her stance, her facial features, her, how she was moving, people would know immediately because she would telegraph. And you would know this is a good day or this is not a good day. And you're missing all of that in a remote situation. Okay. So
yeah. Hello, everybody's back.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. We put the questions up just for ease so everyone knows. We had 2 breakout rooms with the suggestion of question 1, if you remembered it, 2 with question 2, and 1 with question 3. So in total, we had 5 breakout groups. I would just say that we start maybe with a callback. What we're going to do is we're going to time it. We're going to time it to 2 minutes each. So I will set a timer, and then you will have a nice chime telling you that you have to come to a close and we move to the next one, and I will put it to 2 minutes each. So would group question 1 of the groups question 1, whoever wants to start, just give us your, I love that Sylvain said it, what is new, what's tangible, what's meaningful, for 2 minutes. I know Who wants to go?
I'll go ahead and go. Christiane was in my group. Thanks for the thumbs up there, and Tanya. We didn't see the full question. We kind of made our own question of what were the forces that were hard in a remote setting. So that's the question that we talked about. And the things that came up were distractions in if you're not living alone, particularly for working women and with families. In addition with pets, any pet parents. And then an element around the connection pieces. And I think particularly with blended workforce, this comes into play, right? So there's going to be an imbalance of the ability to connect at different levels within the remote versus the hybrid in-person part of it. And particularly the ability to connect with leaders. And to be able to reach the leaders if you're a worker. And in the remote setting, it's been really difficult for some people to be able to do that. Even just a connection of how are you doing would be really powerful, and not getting that, and even not getting messages back when you're trying to reach out. So those were pieces that were coming up, and just the energy levels. I think the energy levels are going to be very different in the remote setting versus a hybrid setting. So those were some key parts that we talked about.
Fantastic. And with time bound, that's great. You will hear it ring, I hope, in 10 seconds. So whoever would like to get next, you can mentally get ready for it. And then we're going to have a chime. I love that. Thank you so much, Laura. There you go. So who's going next? Next group.
I was in the group. I was waiting for my colleagues to jump in. And where are they?
Or you guys can do it together. 2 minutes.
Okay. I think one of the things we emphasized, and I will look for my group to jump in. I take 30 seconds of this, is that we talked about reframing what performance is. Because we talked about how much longer it takes to get anything done and how much more effort it takes to coordinate all the pieces when some are present, some are not. And the other piece of defining performance was not just in productivity of task completion, but so much more of measuring the emotional side. That seems to be the difference, at least that some of us have been seeing. More, are you making a contribution or not? That's where one of the cliff and people feel they're falling off of it, that they're not able to get the connection between what's making a contribution and what's not. Can my team members also add in?
I think just to add on that, we also said what's critical if you don't reframe performance is that you're going to see that acceleration of mental health issues, and on the illness side of it, and ultimately having an unwell workforce is going to impact on organization resilience and will impact on productivity anyway. And the other sort of link to that was, even when people have an opportunity to switch off, FOMO plays in. So that fear of missing out. And so then people continue to be online when actually you need to be restorative.
I would agree with all of that. I think one of the things that we also discussed, though, is we actually think the blended workforce did allow to, my job has started it already, and it did allow the organization to address some of the more troubling findings that were happening when everyone was full remote. So we are finding people truly, meetings are taking less time now, and folks are actually logging off. People are actually taking vacation and not going places, but taking all of their equipment and still working. So this blended workforce seems to be combating some of the challenges that came with us going full remote so quickly.
Thank you for sharing, Diana, and thank you for sharing to the group. So next group, 2 minutes for you.
I'm happy to jump in.
Perfect.
So hi, everybody, Meg Moriarty with US Foods. One thing our team talked about, which I think is still with us today, is this kind of dual experience that a lot of organizations are facing. So we have some, frontline workers who've been, showing up every day in the dark times, where it was sort of frightening to be out, and then even to today. And then we have this other part of the workforce that's been home this whole time. And so several of us had a recent experience of going into the office for the first time and kind of the shock and awe of what that's like. And so I think that's one of the big challenges that companies face is how do we bring this sort of tale of two cities together and make sure that we're able to respond to those really different needs from different groups in their experience over the last 2 years.
Sabine, there is a ton of great things being shared here. We need to think at the end, if we have time for a few comments. I love what is being said, so please keep going.
Someone else from that group, you still have 46 seconds left.
Just really quickly, hi Sabine, it's Jane. Abatanta from Percival Associates. Yeah, thanks Meg for that, because that was a big part of our conversation. And the other challenge I think is we spent a lot of time talking about the stress and how you're dealing with the stress personally, how you're dealing with the stress as organizationally, and acknowledging that a lot of my clients have put boundaries into place, but they're being bent, if you will, now that things are starting to open up a bit. But the stress is still there.
Waiting for the turn. So this is 3 breakout groups. Who wants to go next?
I can maybe jump in for the group I was in, and others can sort of interject as well. I think one of the things we talked about was that the current working practice that we've had during the past year or so has a lot of time been a kind of an ad hoc way of working, because we're still sort of working our way through what it means to have sort of diverse or dispersed workforces and how they coordinate, but that it's not sustainable to work on that kind of ad hoc basis where we're sort of improvising all the time in terms of how we make sure people are on the same page, how we share ideas, etc. And one of the things we discussed was that some of it may be simply that we have this overload and this increase of communication because there's an absence of clear direction about what to do. And that if you had a situation where there was more focus, clearer direction, more empowerment, then you wouldn't need to fill the vacuum by having to constantly check, have this sort of FOMO going on of wondering what's happening, because you know where you're heading in the first place. And if you look at organizations which are very effective in terms of their vision and their direction, then people don't really need to have that amount of coordination because they can actually go on with themselves. And my own experience, having led remote teams for a long time, is that is very much the experience. I had one group where we couldn't see each other face to face for over a year, and we had to do everything via sort of remote communication. But actually one of the team members said, it seems like the less we meet, the more effective we are. And it's simply because we had mastered the art of how you actually become better at setting the direction, knowing what you all have to do, knowing what the rules of engagement are, and then you can get on with it. But if you don't build that scaffolding, the danger is you're in this kind of very fluid world. You're always having to sort of jump around to try and make sure you're on the same page.
Yeah. Structure replaces force or reduces force. And the last group, the 5th group.
I mean, my takeaway was that none of us liked, there's so many elements that we didn't like. You know, sure, we can logically justify certain things that are going on that try to put a good face on it, but I think bottom line, none of us particularly are enjoying this.
What a way to close. Sylvain, you said that there was so much meat in the comments and the thoughts, and I completely agree. And we're running against a time boundary, so we have 3 minutes left. Maybe we could.
Sounds very sad, Sabine.
I think so too. I could actually carry on. Really.
Yeah.
Because again, there's so much knowledge, right? But maybe what we could do for closing is, if we could use the chat again, you've been very active on it anyway. If you could just write one word or one thing that is worth keeping from the experience in the last year and a half, what would that be? And then Sylvain, I just hand it over to you to close us out for today. Just one thing you would like to keep.
Thank you. And yeah, lots of great things already coming up. And maybe building on a few things I heard in you reporting out as you are putting your comment in chat. So Jeff mentioned the conditions for success for a remote team. That's how I understood it. And indeed, my best experience with a team was a remote team. And we had some of the conditions Jeff mentioned. What was our purpose? The North Star was very clear. We knew what we were here for. We had the skills to work remotely. We had tons of discussion on how we work together, what are our rules. We had some autonomy that enabled us as well to take decisions fast. So there are a few, I think, a design element that you need to make it work. I couldn't agree more with Skip either, that we are all totally exhausted and we don't want the next lockdown. And what we've experienced is not the future of work. It's an emergency lockdown. And now we have the opportunity to design intentionally something so much more exciting. And as Laura said earlier, a leader needs to learn how to connect. And I coach a lot of leaders right now on how to do that. And you see a lot of people who are interested in doing it. And then maybe the last one, I love the comment from Diane, who said that a company is already learning from the experiment. So we like it or not, we had the opportunity to have a large-scale experiment around working in a remote way. Most of us would have waited a decade before it would have happened otherwise. So it was not fun, it's still not fun, but what can we learn from it and how can we make it better for our employee? And I heard Diane already doing that. If we can all do that, we will make life better. But I understand it's very hard right now. So I think it's a little bit of both. Sabine, handing over to you because we're exactly at the top of the hour.
We're exactly at the top of the hour. I'm sorry to close this out. I really want to thank you all, many friends, many acquaintances of Fred, many new to Fred, some personal friends who I'm really happy to see that I haven't seen in a long time. Thank you so much, Sylvain, for this great opportunity to exchange and work together on this and for your insights. Thank you, Joe, for inviting us in the first place. Thank you, Kip, for making the introductions in the first place. So a lot of thanks to you all. And we're looking forward to seeing you soon at another Nexus. Thank you, Joe. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.